Hey everyone, Doc T here. Thanks for joining me for another podcast from the Horses Advocate. I'm going to give a plug at the beginning of this. I hope you're all going over to the Horses Advocate and becoming a member because that's where the exciting stuff is happening, thehorsesadvocate.com. And just like it says up there, the Horses Advocate, whoops, I love it when something pops up right in front of me, thehorsesadvocate.com. And it's where I spend all my time. It's where like-minded horsemen get together and they help horses thrive in a human world. I'll tell you this all again at the very end, but I just want to jump into something here. I've got a list of different subjects I want to go over, and sometimes there's just so many. But I want to talk about the fight or flight response. We've all heard of fight or flight, and sometimes we don't understand what it means. We just know that horses will either run away from you or they will fight you, often to the death, or at least to your demise. And we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So I thought I would open up the brain and help you understand what's going on. Let's see if I can make a new blank canvas here and see if we can do a little screen share right now. If we can do that, I will, because, and again, this is a podcast, so don't worry about that. If you can't see this and you're only listening to it because you're, oh, good grief. Well, I give up. Oh, there we go. There we go. We're coming. We're coming. I want to describe what's inside your brain. And you're going to say, there's nothing in my brain right now. But yeah, there is. There's a couple of places in your brain that are very critical for us to understand. And I'm just going to make this little brain. And this is the brain stem. And this is a horrible looking brain. So just bear with me. And I want to draw something here called the prefrontal cortex. And I'll write that. It's a prefrontal, pre meaning in front, a front of the front, prefrontal, FRONTAL, cortex. Now, what's really interesting about the prefrontal cortex is that's where all our thoughts come from. And what's really fascinating, if you look at the neocortex, which is the new, neo means new, the neocortex, people have described it in many ways, but if we peeled off the neocortex of our brains and just dissected it out and then laid it out flat on the table, it would be the size of a good-sized dinner napkin. Now, we've all seen brains, and brains have all these folds that kind of tuck in and tuck out, but we're going to take all those wrinkles and spread it out. And in that neocortex is all your thoughts. That's where all the thoughts that have occurred since you were born to this very moment, they're in the neocortex, and they're, again, the size of a dinner napkin and the thickness of about 3 business cards stacked together. It's just, it blows my mind. It's a very thin layer, but our neocortex in humans is pretty large. It's larger than most other animals, if not larger than all of them on a weight basis. And I'm sure there's somebody out there who's going to correct me on this, but the whole point is the prefrontal cortex is where all the thoughts are, or pardon me, the neocortex is, but the prefrontal cortex here, what's really interesting about that is where our thoughts, our analysis comes from. It's our worry, doubt, fear, well, I shouldn't say that. Let me rephrase that. It's where we see triggers come. Triggers are, we look up and there's your girlfriend or boyfriend standing in front of you, and you have an observation. You don't have a feeling yet. You just have an observation. Okay. Now, what's really neat is we have something here, and we're going to call that oh gosh, I don't know how to spell amygdala. Amygdala. Just remember the amygdala. And the amygdala is where we store our emotions. All right. So we are having basically these connections from the prefrontal cortex going to our emotions. So now we see something in front of us. We recognize it as a person. We now identify that person as a girlfriend or boyfriend, somebody that we know. And that connection is coming to the emotions where we store our fight or flight response. And that's where we realize that this is the boyfriend or girlfriend we don't like and we don't want to be seen. And what's really interesting is right over here is the motor cortex. So the motor cortex is the one that sends the signals to the legs and the arms to run or stay. And depending on what emotion comes through, we're going to determine whether we're going to use the motor cortex to either run towards this person, throw our arms around them and say, we love you, I'm so happy to see you, or turn and run as fast as we can to get away from the person. Now, I love talking about relationships because that's all we have in life is relationships. So we basically have a prefrontal cortex in the front of the bone or front of our brain. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And that's right up here. It's where our eyeballs go in, our smells go in. Like I smell fresh baked apple pie that mom's making, and I'm going to connect to the emotional state of, wow, this is really good, to motor cortex where I run to the kitchen and stick my hand in, my finger in the batter because I want to eat the cake, mixed metaphor. Just bear with me. Or I smell fire, I smell smoke. My emotions are, oh my gosh, I'm not supposed to be smelling smoke. And now I start to get an activity to look for where the fire is and move the horses out of the barn. And that's basically all it is. It's the connection of the prefrontal cortex to the amygdala to the motor cortex. Now, neuroscience is a very complicated thing, but I'm notorious at bypassing complications because I don't want you as horse people to be bogged down in minutia unless I want you to be there, and I might get you there. But in this case, we want to understand why your horse is reacting the way it does to you and what you can do to change it. And basically, if your horse has been trained to love you because of food, then when he sees you, it connects to the emotional part of the brain that says, Yumbo, I'm going to get something sweet to eat. And therefore, they are working off that premise, not because they love you. And so you're not really making the connection that you think you are. The real connection is food-driven motivation. And there's no difference between that and beating a horse, or any other extreme reality or what you think is reality occurring. What you want to do is train the horse so when he sees you or she sees you, they know that they're safe, that this is going to be a willing partnership, that this is going to be something that I want to partake in. So I'm going to switch gears and talk about one of these horsemanship skills that is near and dear to my heart. And it's near and dear because I've seen so many people break this or use this in the wrong way. And I call it cheerleading versus coaching. And this ties right into the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala. In this case, the prefrontal cortex is taking stimulus from their ears. And please remember, just because a horse can't speak a language that we understand, they can hear our language. And their receptors for hearing is not just the words, but the tone that it's said in and the context of what you're saying. Remember, horses don't know anything about texting. This is why I hate texting. Texting is great to say, hey, I'm running late, I'll be there 15 minutes. Great. They don't need to know any more of context or facial characters or anything or tone. Um, but if I said on text, I love you, then is that sarcasm? I love you, a little sarcasm or deep emotional, I love you. There's no context, there's no emotion attached to it with my facial expression. It's just a text. And horses don't know that two-dimensional language or even possibly one-dimensional language. They're in full three-dimensional language, and they hear tones, they see facial expressions, and they read body language, and they read emotions that are being emitted from you. And all that comes into the prefrontal cortex that goes to the amygdala that creates action in the motor cortex, whether they're going to be cooperative and willing or not cooperative and avoid what's going on. And whenever you coach a horse by saying, it's okay, it's all right, he's not going to hurt you, I'm not going to hurt you, I'm going to be done in just a flash, this will be over in a second, don't worry, stand still. Those are all coaching. And based on the three-dimensional image that you're sending out, or even fourth dimensional, if you talk about the energy that you're emitting, pardon me, then the horse is going to take in all those factors in the prefrontal cortex, send it to the amygdala, and say, no, every time that person has come to me, the man, the vet, which I'm guilty of being both, they're seeing a man and a vet come into a stall, and they're already making the connection that this is not going to end well. And they're going to start to move their emotional amygdala toward the prefrontal cortex to move to the back of the stall so they can't be caught. That's coaching. Now, on the flip side, you have cheerleading. And cheerleading is so important, and you should try this. I promise you, it's such a great experiment. I'll give you an example of cheerleading. Thank you. You can't say that word enough. I promise you, you cannot say thank you enough times to your horse. I appreciate you. Thank you for standing. You're doing a great job. I knew you could do it. I believe in you. You are such an amazing animal. My gosh, there's no other horse out there like you. You are the best. I love you. You're the special one in my life. I am so grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. These are all forms of cheerleading. And once you understand that cheerleading is going to come into that amygdala, and it cannot evoke fear, anxiety, untrusting, it can't evoke any negative reaction, because coaching leads to lies, and lies are never good. Cheerleading, when it comes from your heart, in other words, you don't say, gee, you're just great, swell, I think you're the best. Okay, it can't come from there. It's got to come from your heart. You actually have to believe what you're saying. And when you do, it triggers the amygdala in a positive way, and all the positive emotions of trust, of a relationship, of whatever that seems positive, that shuts down the motor cortex that causes the horse to move away. And the horse actually may even move into you and become the willing partner you're looking for. Now, what's really fascinating is in my 10 Irrefutable Laws of Horsemanship, which is a book I put out, you can buy it on Amazon. You can get it as part of your membership of the Horses Advocate. It's part of the deal. Just download it and read it. I have two segments and two chapters in it. One is called Seek First to Understand. And the next chapter is Then to Be Understood. Yes, I took it from Stephen Covey, who had a whole chapter in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People on this. But I applied to humans and horses. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. So if you seek first to understand that this horse is looking for a relationship that is built on trust and respect, that only comes from cheerleading. It's not from coaching. And the second is then to be understood. That's all about you describing what you need. Say, that a boy, listen, I know I've got some medication and it's got to get into you. and I know you don't like it. I get that. And I understand you don't like it. But this medication is helping you with this infection. Now, you don't have to say these words, but I think you should, because there's a lot of horses that really want to know what's going on. And you have to reflect back to the horse their anxiety and take it from them and understand and say, I'm going to do the best I can for you because you're doing the best you can for me. And I appreciate how well you're standing here. And I know you don't like it, but I know that you can do it because you're special. You can do this. Now, listen, I know that there are felons out there. I know there are horses that you try this on and your barn mates are going to laugh you out of the barn. They're going to think you're a nut job. I get it. So try it silently on some of the horses in the quiet situations. Don't go to the worst horse in the barn and try to connect to the horse that you can't even get a halter on. It's, there are many, many steps between. But what I find amazing is as I'm working on a horse and the owner's outside and they start saying, whoa, 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 it's okay, stand still, he'll be fine. It's mostly coming from their embarrassment that their horse isn't standing perfectly for the veterinarian, the guest in the barn. And so their anxiety comes through their mouth to the horse's ears, right to the horse's anxiety center. And they start to panic. They start to fight. And it's so funny because I'll just talk to the horse and say, just ignore her. Don't worry about it. It's just between you and me. And the horse turns their attention to me and they're like, yeah, I know. She's a nut job. Right. And then I turn to the owner and say, why don't you tell the horse just something special? Encourage the horse, be the cheerleader. And they do. They start to say, you're doing great. You're doing wonderful. Thank you so much. And instantly the horse goes, they just relax. They allow me to do what I've got to do because now they're not worried about mom or dad inflicting their opinion on them. And it is breathtaking. I've even had owners start to cry because they didn't know how much negative effect they had on their horses. So I'm going to give you a little side note because some of you want a little bit of side notes. And that's this. Try cheerleading on your spouse. Try cheerleading on your parents. Try cheerleading on your friends. And try cheerleading on the stranger behind the counter at your convenience store. Just try it and bring it from your heart. Even if you're not happy about something's bugging your life, and you're at that 7-Eleven store or your convenience store and you walk in and you're just buying a package of gum, turn to the person behind the counter and say, thank you for being here. I appreciate you having this gum here. Or whatever words you want to come that comes to you that shows appreciation, and cheerlead for just 2 or 3 seconds. Just cheerlead and watch what that person does. I'll give you a short story. I was on Long Island and Melissa and I were in the car pulling into the gas station, and I leave her to pump the gas and I run in to get some things. And I go to the guy behind the counter, and it was a 7-Eleven. And the guy is standing behind there. He's obviously from India. You could tell from his, how he looked and how he spoke and the name on his badge. And I tried to read his name properly, and he kind of laughed. And I said, India, huh? He says, yes. And I says, you've got the longest lived democracy in the world. And his eyes just widened. And I said, that's really amazing that we're both in countries that have a democracy for a government. And I just spent 10, 15 seconds talking about democracy and how influential India has been, and how I'm just aware that he's coming from a country with democracy, and how appreciative I was. And he took my money, he bought the stuff, and I walk all the way out to the gas pumps. And I'm getting in the car, And Melissa turns to me, she says, uh-oh, what'd you do now? And I'm like looking up and I see this man running out of the store right toward my car. I mean, he's jogging. And I'm like, okay, do we need to like close the doors and get out of here? I mean, I paid, didn't I? Or do I just roll down my window and see what I got? And I chose the latter. I roll down the window and he sticks his head in the car. He says, I want you to know how thankful and grateful I am that you took those few moments just to help me connect to my old country. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Thank you. That's cheerleading. That's how powerful it can be. That's what can happen to your horse. I promise you, if you just try it on a horse that you've got just some difficulty in training or bridling or something, and you know something's bothering them, try cheerleading. Try it on your, family members. It's mind-boggling what it can happen. And I don't want to tell you that to start manipulating people through cheerleading, because that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is when you have fear, doubt, and anxiety built into your body, and you start to express words through your mouth that you think are helpful, they're coming usually from a negative place. And when your words come from a negative place, the horse will receive it as being negative, not really aware of what the words are saying. Stand still. It'll be okay. Don't worry. He's not going to hurt you. It's all from fear, doubt, and anxiety. And the horse reads it as fear, doubt, and anxiety. It goes from the prefrontal cortex right to the amygdala, and boom, you've got a disconnect. And you got a horse is filled with fear, doubt, and anxiety, and is heading out of town. Whereas if you try to come from a positive emotion of certainty, of confidence, of gratefulness, and you just say, thank you. I know this is tough for you, but you're doing a tremendous job. I knew you could do it. I'm so proud of you. Watch what happens. I love to hear your comments, but of course you have to become a member of the Horses Advocate, which I really, really highly recommend. So you can find other like-minded people who want to get in together to talk about their experiences of cheerleading versus coaching. And by the way, I'm going to give you one piece of advice. You know what men call coaching? Nagging. Nobody on the planet likes to be nagged. I promise you, we do not like nagging, and coaching is nagging. Stop your nagging, start cheerleading, and watch the immediate difference that's going to occur. And while you're doing that, go over and become a member of the Horses Advocate, be part of the solution, help other people learn how to help horses thrive in a human world. I appreciate you guys so much. I'm so grateful for you. And I mean that sincerely. It comes from all aspects of my heart, not the bottom, the top, the sides, the ins, the outs, all around it. My heart says, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you taking the time and listening to the Horses Advocate podcast. This is Doc T, and I will talk to you later. Bye. Hey everyone, Doc T here. Thank you for listening to my content. Would you do me a huge favor? Would you please subscribe, comment, like, thumbs up, and give a star review? However it's presented to you, I want you to do that. There are two reasons. The first, of course, is to improve this product. This way I know what you like, what you don't like, what I can improve upon, what topics you want me to cover. But more importantly, it's also going to help others find me. And by doing that, you are now engaged in this mission of helping horses thrive in a human world. By you helping, we can reach others. And that I would be so grateful for. And remember, go to thehorsesadvocate.com for updates on this information. Thehorsesadvocate.com. And again, thank you so much for being here. Doc T out.